What's up and welcome back to my channel. It's JVceo. If you're new here, make sure you like, comment and subscribe. Trying to grow the YouTube channel this year to about 20,000 subscribers. I took a break, but now I'm back consistent, as you can see. But anyways, today I'm going to talk about why I love property investment, or just why I love property in general. When did I actually get into property? That's the question that a lot of people ask. And they think that when I got into property was when I purchased my first property. But that's not the case. I actually got into property way before then. Used to sit on the sidelines observing my dad, see my dad conduct deals, sell properties, use that to show up his businesses and so on and so forth. And then I just took a natural interest to it and then started researching more. But the truth is, no one actually ever sat me down and said, look, this is how it works. This is how land investment works. This is how this works. I just took the interest and I took it a step further and I'd done a bunch of research and realized, you know what, this is how I want to build my foundation. And then fast forward, I think when I was 18, I purchased my first property, which was a landed property. And then from then, I never looked back. But why do I love properties that much? So I'll go through about 13 reasons why I think property is probably the best thing. So my opinion is, if you don't know what you're doing, invest in property. If you know what you're doing, invest in property. If things are going well, invest in property. If things are not going well, invest in property. Anyways, number one, property is tangible. Tangible ownership. Don't get me wrong, there are other forms of investment. You can buy stocks and shares and so on and so forth. But I love being able to touch and feel my investment. It makes me feel in control, if that makes any sense. And like, it makes me actually realize, yes, this is mine. Because when we talk about, say, crypto, what happened, I believe last year or the year before, where we were all rich through crypto, I had a couple of millions in our accounts and so on and so forth. Some people cashed out, some people didn't. But that was all digital money, because eventually the market crashed and no one actually, a lot of people didn't make no money out of it. They only have, memories of when they had a lot of money in crypto, when they had a lot of money in stocks. But with properties, you actually can touch, hold it, whether it's land, whether it's a house, whether it's an apartment, you can feel it. That is the number one reason why I love property. The number two reason why I love property, I would say, is the cash flow that it gives you. If you actually invested enough, you can have property replace your 9 to 5, for example. There's plenty of stories on YouTube how, people have started investing in property and use that to replace their 9 to 5s and so on and so forth. So I think the cash flow from property is amazing. It just adds another source of income. And for those of you that are well ambitious and maybe want to go on your way to becoming a millionaire, you would know that the average millionaire has about 7 sources of income. So if you already have a business and maybe another business, you can then have property investment be the third leg, bringing in some cash flow. And if you're smart enough, you can compound that cash flow and use it to invest in even more property. The third reason why I love property, I would say, is probably the idea of perhaps finite resources. So you would never, ever see more properties in the world. The land that there is today is all there would ever be. Obviously, within reason, you have people like Dubai and even here in Africa where they're reclaiming some land. But generally speaking, 95% of the land there is all there ever will be. You can't manufacture more land, if that makes any sense. So once once you bought it, you've bought it. And I think that's very powerful in itself. This isn't gold. This isn't silver where you can just go into the ground and mine more. You cannot mine more properties, So if, let's say, if there's a landmass of 800 hectares available in a very prime location, once those 800 hectares are gone and there's a landlocked property or a landlocked location, no water around, that's it, it's gone. So that's another reason why I love property. Right, the next reason why I love property, I think that's probably point number 4, I'm not really too sure, but I would say wealth creation. Think about it. I want you guys to think about one thing, right? When you go back to the ADs and the 1600s and the 1400s, why were there wars? Why were there wars? There were wars so that emperors and leaders could conquer the other place and take what's not really just the slaves and, you know, the people as or the prisoners as slaves, but no, it was also to conquer their land, because real wealth lies in land. And even when you go back to the 1800s, you realize that the measure of a man was always how much land he had, how much cows he had, but generally how much land they have. So I actually believe that property is a real source of wealth. Like, take myself for example, I have a sizable property portfolio. I'm not going to say huge because it's nothing compared to where I'm trying to go to, but when I compare it to quite a lot of things, I'm like, wow, I hold a lot of wealth in property. That's the truth. And it's shored me up and it's protected me against, you know, a lot of things and a lot of pitfalls. So 100%. Moving on from that, I would say another reason why I love property is a sense of control by, you know, being a decision maker. So when you purchase property, you become a decision maker, especially if you have the freehold on the property. You don't have to, you know, go to a company meeting to effect change. No, you know what? I'm filming in one of my apartments at the moment, and I can make the decision to do whatever I want within reason, if that makes any sense. That's because it's an apartment. Even more so if it's a land or if it's a house, I can do literally anything. I can raise it down and rebuild it again if I wanted to, you know. And I think that control is part of what I love about property investment as well. A very important reason why I love property is one of the only things where you can literally put your sweat in and your sweat turns into gold. You know, I call that sweat equity. So this is very prevalent in, let's say developing context, or let's say BRR, that's buy, rehab, rehab, refinance and rent. If that makes any sense, that's more prevalent in the UK. But if you're able to put your sweat equity into a property, let's say you buy a rundown property, you do it up, you increase the value, you put it back in the market, then you can sort of remortgage it, take your money out, move it to the next deal. That's amazing. That, like, literally there is nothing better than that. Again, sweat equity, you know, I've been at sites where all I had to do was go to the site and put up perimeter fence. As soon as I put up the perimeter fencing, it becomes worth more. And don't get me wrong, putting it up might be very tedious. I'm out in the sun all day long, but again, that's my sweat equity. And as soon as I put my sweat equity in, I come out with more real life cash or real life uplift in the value of the property as well. And then coupled up with sweat equity, you have your return on investment, you know. So now when you start, you know, thinking about it, property is, again, one of the only things that will give you that constant ROI on your money, if that makes any sense, and at a good rate, you know. I mean, put your money in the bank, how much do you get? I remember a couple of years ago, I think I left like £30,000 in the bank in one of my accounts, and then I came back a couple months later and I think I had like £10, you know, which was pretty much nothing. But if I'd taken that money, let's say that £30,000, and let's say I put down, let's say I bought a 100k property, put down 30%, which is, or put down 25%, which is 25 grand, and then I used the remaining 5 grand to spice it up, you know, liquor, paint, and so on and so forth. Even if I don't go and refinance that property and I don't increase the value on that property, let's say I'm able to rent it out as rooms. I have 3 bedrooms in the property and I'm able to rent it out at, let's say, you know what, even £300 a month. That's 300, 300, 300. That's £900. £900 times 12 months in a year, you have somewhere around 10,800. You're making 10,800 on your £30,000 investment. That's over a 30% return on investment, if that makes any sense. Obviously, that's your gross return. That doesn't take into account your mortgage payments and so on and so forth and other costs. But regardless, it's way better than leaving your money in a bank. And I think, you know, your return on investment is one of the reasons why I invest in properties. And that's why I diversify as well. So I don't just do land investment. I also have, you know, properties, like, you know, apartments, buildings, and so on and so forth. So that way I can get that return on investment and that monthly income from it. We all know that the food we eat comes from the soil, you know, and when you invest in property, you give yourself real options. Options of being able to cultivate your own meals, options of being able to, you know, farm what you eat. And believe it or not. I know not so prevalent in the UK because we're not really into farming that much. But when you come into Africa, farming is huge. Farming is holding up some economies, like in Africa. Like before, for example, Nigeria used to be, I think, one of the top palm oil producing nations in the whole world. You know, so farming, and how do you farm without actually having a piece of your own land? If that makes any sense. So that's another reason why I love property. And believe it or not, with some of my landed properties, I make money from it because I rent out to farmers. You know, they don't have their land, so they take mine to farm on it, and I take a portion of the produce that's farmed from the land, and I still take some, you know, monthly income from them as well. That's another reason why I love property. Moving on from that, property generally beats inflation. So whatever the rate of inflation, your annual rise from the property and your cash flow, your income from the property would always be enough to beat the inflation. Whereas, again, back to a couple points before, if you leave that money in the bank, you would never beat inflation. That money in the bank is worth a lot less a year later than it was a year before due to literally inflation eating away at it. But property, for me, has proven to be a hedge against inflation. My next point is quite interesting because my next point is how I started, but I don't really use that anymore. So leverage in property, I think it's amazing. What other business can you get into and you just put in, let's say, £100,000 and you're able to work with £400,000? Or you put in 100 million naira and you're able to work with 400 million naira. No other business. This point is especially true when you look at the UK market, for example, where, you know, credit and mortgages is everything. You don't buy your properties outright, but that also gives you the power of leverage. So now you're working with way more money than you ever had access to. You know, you go and put down £25,000 as your deposit, the bank borrows you the remaining £75,000, and now you're able to buy a 100 grand property. Because obviously the way it works in the UK is you can put down 25% of the value of the property and the bank will give you the rest when it comes to, you know, buy to lets investment. If it's residentials, you can put down maybe 5-10% depending on your credit. So I think leveraging for me is amazing. It's a way that you can expedite your growth in the property space. Businesses are great, don't get me wrong, because I have my own businesses as well, but there is no business that I have right now where I can go and put in £50,000 and I will then have access to £200,000. No, you know, whatever I put in is what I have access to. But fortunately in property, it doesn't work that way. You have the magic of leverage. Now, let's dig in a little deeper, right? Let's take some examples, which is the next point for me. You buy a property, then you do all you need to do on it. You've refinanced it, you pulled out some capital out of the property, then you've rented it out. Now you have somebody that is paying your debt on that property. That person, essentially speaking, is giving you free equity. Because, for example, let's say I've taken out a mortgage on a 100k house, right? I put down 25 grand. I've increased the value to, let's say, 130, 140. I pulled out most of my money. I might only have 5 grand left in that deal. And then I've rented the place. And I've structured my deal in a way where it's a 15-year mortgage. After 15 years, it's paid off. And I've done it as a repayment mortgage, not an interest only. Now, in 15 years, let's say that property is no longer worth 130. Let's say that property is now worth £200,000. I pulled out my original money and all I had left in the property was 5 grand. That means somebody throughout that 15-year period, and obviously by rising equity of the property, has accumulated 195,000 for my personal wealth portfolio. And I think that's crazy. That is free equity. That there is free equity, and that's what I talk about. Property is the only thing that you can do that. I can basically go and take a loan, put myself in debt, take a loan, and I can have someone else pay off the loan for me. You know, that's amazing, and that's why I love property. And obviously, moving on from that, that already links to what I explained earlier on. You have the market appreciation. So now, you know, I could go and buy that 100 grand property in 10 years. If it's increased by 5% a year, compounded, only God knows what that is in 10 years, you know. And back to my previous point, that also beats inflation. And these are the many reasons why I would always be invested in property. And for me now, it's not just the regular property game. Now I'm looking to diversify. Obviously, you guys know I do a lot of land investment. I buy a lot of properties, but now I'm looking to start doing my own development. I'm looking to start building out my own estates, land banking opportunities where I can, you know, sell I could sell landed properties to individuals and they can have, you know, a 5 to 7 years exit plan. I would love to start doing hospitality, for example, which is, you know, building out hotels. I would love to even go into medical related real estate, building out hospitals and so on and so forth. Anything to do with real estate, to do with property, I would love to be front, center and back of that. Property would always form a huge part of my portfolio. I remember many years ago, I was watching a video by, I think, Alan Sugar, and he was worth around, I believe, 900 million at that point, just short of $1 billion, right? And he basically said, look, I can write a check for, I think he said, just about 100 million and it would go through, but anything above that would bounce. And then he went on to explain that the reason being about 70% of his net worth, I believe around 600 to 700 million was actually in property, bricks and mortar. You know, go and look at all the wealthy individuals in the world. Go and look at even Bill Gates. Bill Gates is buying up farmlands across the US. Go and look at the most wealthiest individual. I know things are changing now. You have people coming along in the tech space like Elon Musk, but look at traditional wealth. Traditional wealth is always based in property. So it's simple, follow the money. If you follow the money and you're able to do it diligently and well enough for long enough, you'd make a ton of money. It's that simple. To finish up my video, you know, the last reason, this is gonna make you guys laugh. The last reason why I love property for me is the permanent nature of it. I call it eternity, you know? So once I purchase that property, it's mine. Especially if I'm buying freeholds, I can then pass it on to my kids can pass it on to their kids. I promise you, go into central London, you will see properties that are in a family that's been passed down 6 generations. And for me, that is the beauty of property. In fact, when the building gets old, if I own the building and the building gets old, I can raise the building down, the land is still there, and I'll build on the land again. So in 200 years to come, in 300 years to come, my hard work now would still be paying off to that generation then. I mean, hopefully they appreciate it. If they don't, then they don't, you know. But these are the reasons why I love property, man. And for those of you that are not yet involved, I would advise it. Diversify your portfolio. Look outside of the UK as well. There are some of you that are Asian. The Asian property market is thriving. African property market is thriving. You have Kenya, you have Nigeria, you have Ghana, you have Tanzania, you have South Africa. Amazing, amazing opportunities in all these regions. So anyways, these are why I love property, and this is why I'll stay investing and stay invested in property. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe. If you have any video ideas, feel free to put it in the comment section. I read all my comments and I'll try and reply to you as well. Thank you for watching my channel. Until next time.